Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Guns and Guitars, and today we're going to be doing a video that I've been meaning to do for a really long time. I just haven't had the bass to do it. Okay, a buddy of mine reached out to me last week and said, hey, I've got this cheapo bass that I got at a pawn shop, and I was just wondering what your best budget bass upgrades are. And I said, you know what? Don't worry about it. Drop it off at my shop and I will upgrade it for you. So he's a fellow Christian brother. He uses this bass to serve at his church, and this is a way that I can be a blessing and give back. So if you want to see how to take a cheapo bass that maybe you got from Marketplace or a pawn shop or something and turn it into a really nice bass with just a few budget-friendly upgrades, stick around. I'm Dan. This is Guns and Guitars. Let's get started. All right, guys, here is the bass in question. It is an old school Alvarez bass that has been stripped down and refinished. You can get it for cheap. It's not old enough to be vintage and cool. It's not new enough to be modern and cool. And so that leaves us with one choice, and that's just to make it cool, right? So I'm going to split this video up into two sections. We are going to do a video on the best products to upgrade, which is what this video is. And then we're going to do a separate video that is the best DIY upgrades. But in this video, we're just going to talk about the products. Now, the first budget-friendly upgrade that we're going to do is we are going to replace the bridge. This is the bridge that I use for all of my custom bass builds, and for a few reasons. One, you can either top load the strings like you normally would, or you can string through the strings. So you can drill holes in your body, which is what we're going to do here, to add a string through option. That's something that a lot of people say adds sustain. The reason why I like string through bodies is mostly because it helps hold that bridge down, so you don't risk stripping out the screws that are holding your bridge by only having lateral force. You also have down force because the string comes up and over the bridge. So whether or not it helps with sustain, I don't know that I could tell the difference, but I do appreciate having string through holes, so we're going to drill those out here. But the other reason why I really like this bridge is because it is not only adjustable for intonation and for string height with these set screws right here, but it is also adjustable for string spacing. So if you prefer a narrow string spacing, you can go as close as an 18 millimeter string spacing, or if you like a really wide string spacing, you can go as wide as a 21 millimeter string spacing, which is very wide. But what's really great about that is that if your neck is not aligned properly with your pickup routes, you might be having trouble aligning your strings right over your pickup pull pieces, and these little string spacing adjusters will help you get it properly aligned. That way you can get the most tone possible out of your instrument. Now, these bridges run on Amazon for 25 bucks, so I'll put an affiliate link down in the description for you guys. But also, because I'm starting to use these on my custom bass builds, I'm ordering them in bulk, and I'm going to have them for sale on my website as well. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have an option where you can buy a standard bridge or a blemished bridge. And if you look closely at this one, you can see that it's got tons of marks and dings and scratches all up in it. If you want to know that you'll get a good one first try, you can buy one from my website for 30 bucks. Or if you would just rather save money, then you can order a known blemished one for 20 bucks. So I'll put links to those down in the description. And of course, if I'm ever out of stock, I've got that Amazon link as well, so you guys can go ahead and purchase from Amazon. Now, if this bass had a standard like Fender or Music Man bridge to begin with, then the holes on these would line up perfectly with the bridge placement before. But because this is a weird sort of like old school knockoff brand, it's got this weird bridge that has a different hole pattern. So I'm gonna have to align and drill new holes for this. And if you've never done this before, it's pretty important that you get your bridge aligned properly, not only so that your strings line up with your pickups, but also so that it intonates properly. And I have a dedicated video for that process. It's my foolproof method for nailing bridge placement every time. So if you've never done this before and you want to see how I do that, go ahead and click on that video. Now we're going to go ahead and drill out these holes so that we can make this a string through bridge. And a quick DIY hack, if you like your bridge and you don't want to replace it, but you do want the benefits of a string through bridge, there's absolutely zero reason why you can't just drill holes through your bridge and down through your body to make it a string through bridge. Especially with top load bridges, these intonation adjustment set screws are always offset to allow for the path of the string. So there's no reason, you can't just drill straight through the base plate right there. Now we're going to talk about unarguably the hands down most important upgrade you can make to your bass is the pickups. Okay, if you bought a low end bass, the stock pickups that came from the factory are just not doing your instrument justice. I guarantee it. Now, pickups obviously are a very personal preference, and if there's a very specific sound that you're going for, then you probably already know what pickups you need to go after. But if you're just looking for something that will sound a heck of a lot better for not a lot of money at all, I cannot recommend more Epic Custom Shop pickups. A PJ set like this will only run you like $99. But what's shocking is that at that price, you actually get boutique grade hand scatter wound pickups with Alnico rod magnets. These are just beautiful for 99 bucks. Now, if you get a just standard jazz bass set, 89 bucks, and I think if you just need the P pickup, 59 bucks. So seriously, definitely the best value in the industry, hands down. And actually, that's the reason why I have chosen Epic Custom Shop for my custom bass. Now these, unfortunately, are going to run you a bit more than $99 for a set because these are custom wound to my spec. I worked with Epic Custom Shop and we went through, I don't even remember how many prototypes until we dialed in the exact tone that I was looking for. So basically, I call the tone profile of my pickups vintage with a modern twist. So it really lends itself well to not only classic styles of music, but also more modern styles kind of at the same time. And so you'll get to hear these in the sound demo a little bit later, but if you want to hear Epic Custom Shop's pickups by themselves, oddly enough, I already have a dedicated video for that. So you guys can watch that video and hear sound demos of their versions of these pickups. Another thing to mention, though, is if you order from Epic Custom Shop, there is a 2 to 3 week lead time because they make them to order. Whereas if you buy these from my website, I've already ordered them and I have them in stock, and so they will ship immediately. All right, now the next budget-friendly upgrade we are going to do is the tuners. Okay, these are the tuners that came on it. If you have a cheap bass that came with sealed bearing tuners and you're not super happy with them and you want to upgrade them, this is the upgrade you want to make. Okay, these are Wilkinson, and these are a clone of the Hipshot Ultralights. Okay, it's an open geared tuner, and so therefore you can maintain it, you can clean it, you can lubricate it, and the operation on these is just super smooth, really nice fine tuning adjustment, excellent engagement for sustain, there's that buzzword again. But whereas the Hipshot ones will run you about $35 per tuning key, these will run you $35 for the set. So you can see how much of a better deal this is. And I don't currently sell these on my website. I do want to work with Music Lily to eventually become a dealer. But for now, I'm just buying them on Amazon. So there's a link down in the description where you can get them on Amazon. Now we're going to talk about something that kind of bridges the gap between budget upgrades and DIY upgrades. And that's the wiring. The wiring that I'm going to add to this guitar right here is the same wiring that I use on my custom basses, and that's going to allow us to have the standard volume tone selection, and then also the ability to run both these pickups together in series or parallel. Parallel is standard setting, series is sort of a passive mid boost, and we're going to install a switch where we can split these to separate outputs, so we can either record both outputs independent, or we can externally bi-amp, run our neck pickup to one amp setup and our bridge pickup to another amp setup. And then as a bonus, when you activate both switches together, you'll get both pickups in series as a blower switch straight to your output, which adds a little bit of a top end boost. Completely passive, no batteries required. It's excellent. And if you're interested in wiring your bass like this, I do have a wiring diagram available on my website. I only charge $5, and it's also free to any Patreon supporter. So if you support me on Patreon, you get all my wiring diagrams for free. You can just help yourself. Now, if you have no confidence in your soldering ability, or you don't have a soldering iron and you just don't want to touch this stuff, I do sell on my website these harnesses pre-wired, where you can just drop them in, connect your pickups, and you are ready to go. Now, unfortunately, that makes this less of a budget-friendly upgrade. And again, if you're a do-it-yourselfer and you are willing to take on the challenge of soldering it all together, but you don't necessarily have all the pots, switches, and hookup wire, then I'm going to sell a DIY kit on my website as well. And it will come like this, just basically in a plastic bag, all the pots and switches and everything that you need, plus all of the lengths of wire pre-cut and ready to connect, and a physical printed copy of the wiring diagram for you to follow. And I'll be able to offer that for much cheaper because it won't require so much time wiring it together. Now, if you're dealing with scratchy pots or switches and you don't want to upgrade your whole wiring harness, you like the way it is just from the factory, then you can pull your pots and switches out and just spray it with a little bit of this Deoxit D5. And this stuff is an electronics cleaner, and more importantly, it's a preservative. So not only will it get rid of that nasty junk in there that's causing the scratching and popping, but it will prevent it from happening ever again, honestly. And so anytime I've ever cleaned a pot or switch with this stuff, that was the last time I had to do it. I haven't had to do it again for the rest of its life. So just as a preventative measure, all my kits, pre-wired harnesses, and custom bases get this treatment before I even wire it up. So this gives you a good idea of what you would get with a pre-wired harness. If you ordered it from me, you would have your connections clearly marked, where to connect your neck and bridge hot and ground connections, your bridge ground connection, and then you're good to go, because you will also have the output jack pre-wired as well. The only reason why I don't have that pre-wired in here is because I need to use the barrel jack for this specific base, and I need to install the barrel jack before I can connect those wires. So, but yes, if you ordered a pre-wired harness from me, this would already be installed. You just connect your pickups, your bridge ground, and you're good to go. All right, now we are going to move on to one of the cheapest and also one of the best budget-friendly upgrades you can do to your base, and that's the nut. Most cheap bases like this one come with a plastic nut piece. This one, luckily enough, was actually cut pretty well. And so playability wise, it's not bad, but plastic really just does nothing for transferring vibration. And so the tone that you get from a plastic nut is not very good. It also hinders your sustain a little bit. So upgrading the nut is a really great idea. Now, I used to use brass nuts because I really like the tone of a brass nut, but I soon realized that the fretted notes sounded different than the open strings, because obviously once you start fretting, then the tone of the nut doesn't necessarily come through because you're pinching it on the fret instead. So I've gone back to using bone nuts, and I just buy them pre-cut because that's the easiest way to do this. And so using a pre-cut bone nut, these things run you like $6 or $7 for a single pre-cut bone nut. But the most important thing when you're installing a new nut is that you cut it to the right depth. And I have information on how to do that in how to set up your base like a pro. And I'll talk more about that video a little bit later. This one actually doesn't look too bad. It's a little tall probably. So I'm just gonna sand down the base of it a little bit just to get it to the right height for all the strings. And then we'll go ahead and string this thing up. All right, the last budget upgrade that we're gonna do, we're gonna spend a little bit of time talking about, because it's something that a lot of people just don't give a lot of weight to when they're trying to improve the tone of their instrument. And that's the strings. I honestly think the strings impact the sound of your bass just as much as your pickups and your playing, okay? It's generally accepted that the player makes the biggest difference in your sound, and then the next thing is the pickups, but I think the strings are right up there with it. Now, I have a few different recommendations based on what your budget is for your bass strings, and I will say my number one recommendation is probably Fender Super 7250s. And these come in at just like 17 or 18 bucks for the set. So really inexpensive as far as bass strings go. And I just think the tone on these is superb. Yes, there are strings that sound a little bit better and tone that lasts a little bit longer, but they usually run about twice the price. So for example, Guitar Authority strings. Okay, I'm a huge fan of Guitar Authority strings. I think the tone is a little bit better and it lasts quite a bit longer, but these do run you like $30 a set. So it's nearly double the price. Also, you know, Labellas, DRs, Rotosounds, all those high-end bass string manufacturers, they all have a unique sound, and the tone on those really lasts quite a while, and the price reflects it. But I think that Fender bass strings sound nearly as good and the tone lasts nearly as long for nearly half the price. Now, speaking of near the tone and near the quality for half the price, I do have another recommendation for you, and that's ChromaCast bass strings. They come in at, again, half the price. So you can actually get a 2-pack for, I think, $17 or $18 on Amazon. I'll put a link in the description. And so you get 2 for essentially the price of 1. And again, I feel like the tone is almost as good. For that reason, I actually use ChromaCast bass strings on my custom basses because they sound good enough to make a really good first impression. But knowing that most people that buy a high-end bass are going to put their favorite strings on it, I didn't have to invest into really nice strings that will probably get taken off pretty quick. And now that this bass is all put back together and set up, I went ahead and recorded a few sound demos for you guys. So we're just going to do an A-B comparison with standard parallel operation to this bass when I first got it versus how it is now. And as you're listening, I want you to listen for increased sustain because I think I might have heard a lot more than I expected. Now, obviously I did a few DIY tricks to this that probably also help with that sustain a little bit. So it may not just be the bridge and tuners responsible for that, but just let me know in the comments if you're hearing what I'm hearing. Now I know I just demoed this thing for you in its standard parallel operation. We still have series blower, as well as stereo split. And I'm gonna go ahead and demo those for you next week in a dedicated video for this wiring harness because there is so much tone wrapped up in this package that it deserves a video of its own. Plus this one's getting a little bit long anyway. So make sure that you are subscribed so that you know when that video comes out because these sounds are super cool, especially when you stereo split them. I'm Dan, this is Guns and Guitars, and I will see you next week.